Some nasty cross between the Hollywood Squares and the Brady Bunch. Here we are. Welcome to Football Week in America. Mike Tirico, Tony Dungy. Is he this way? No, Tony's this way. There you go. Florio's looking down the right way. Rodney's down here. I got that. It's good to be with y'all. Guys, we're going to have this, I think, after 3 weeks of the NFL season. We thought, okay, things are cool. This COVID-19 thing is figured out. But maybe we got lulled by the bubbles in the NBA and the NHL to think once you got in, it was all going to be smooth. And we have this week, and Florio, I'll start with you. The news, as we're taping this just a short time ago, that the Titans game against the Steelers will be postponed till Monday or Tuesday. What have you been hearing in the conversations the last day or so, Mike?
Well, I mean, and the good news is a short-term postponement because it seems to be engineered to give the Titans a chance to go back to their facility on Saturday, get a couple of practices in, and have a fair chance to have a fair game against a Steelers team that has every opportunity to get ready to face the Tennessee Titans. So now that the testing has come back with only one additional positive Titans player as of today, and they'll surely keep testing every day given the incubation period, there is encouragement that they've gotten this contained, that it's not going to be a massive outbreak, that none of the Vikings players caught it during the game on Sunday, which confirms the league's belief that in an open-air setting or in a dome with great ventilation, you're not going to have transmission from one team to the next. The greater risk is transmission among the players and coaches on a given team. So it's good news. It's not perfect news, but it should serve as a wake-up call to the league because I think we'd start to get a little complacent after 3 weeks. They're like, yeah, this is going to work out. This is going to be fine. We got a reminder this week. It may not be fine. Everybody needs to be careful all year long.
I'm going to let Tony and Rodney go and ask you questions and get their thoughts on what this deal is. I just got one more for you, Mike. This was Saturday night, Sunday. It's now Wednesday as we're talking here. The incubation period's a week or so. The question, even though guys are testing negative, we still don't know yet how limited the outbreak is. We hope this is a good sign that everyday testing has been going on. Is there conversation around the people you've talked to that we don't know yet? This is really, I hate to say trial and error, but it's a little bit of that at this point, trying to figure out what the parameters are going to be to know a team is relatively clean going into competition.
There's definitely an element of everyone holding their breath and waiting for the daily results to come in and hoping that the numbers don't continue to grow one at a time, two at a time, etc. And the question becomes, will they feel comfortable come Saturday that they can allow the Titans players back into the facility? Because even with all of the measures in place to limit the spread, you don't want anyone in there who still hasn't gotten to the point where they've tested positive yet, or that the test they give a sample for on Saturday when they're admitted to the building comes back a day later that they were positive, that the incubation period finally hit. So there is some concern there, but they're handling this the way that they expected to. This isn't a surprise, as the commissioner said yesterday, and they're just trying to make good decisions while there is a certain amount of hold your breath and wait to see how it all plays out.
Tony, what do you think about all this?
You know, when I worked for Denny Green back in the late 90s, he used to practice these type of things, and they would never, ever come up. But I think this is what coaches have talked about all year. Hey, we're going to have to be flexible. Things are going to happen that we couldn't expect. How are we going to react to it? The teams that are in the running, in the hunt at the end of the year are going to be teams that deal with uncertainty and deal with change the best. So this is going to be a test. I think everybody was kind of waiting for something like this, and now we have to see how people respond. But it's going to be a challenge all year, no question.
And I think just after talking to a couple players, and I asked them, would you be comfortable going out there playing? They said, yeah, every week is a challenge because you just don't know who's infected or what's going on behind the scenes. But I think the message in the locker room, Mike, needs to be, you need to continue to be careful, diligent, do all this, follow all the safety protocols, and don't get relaxed. I live out here in Atlanta, and you can go out in the streets and you see people going to clubs, going to gym, and everybody's kind of put their guard down with this whole COVID thing. So I think the message has to be from player to player, hey, we have to continue to do what we have to do throughout the entire NFL.
Rod, so let me just ask you one more thing about Tennessee, and then we'll move on to other stuff. So you're a player for the Titans, and your facility's shut down till Saturday. You're doing all this stuff virtually. If you can't get back in the facility until then, can you be ready to play a game on a Monday or a Tuesday?
I think they're definitely at a competitive disadvantage, Mike, because you want to be in the facility, you want to have access to all the tape and film, and you want to be able to communicate with your coaches. That's a big part of preparation, because when you're there and you're practicing, you get a chance to see mistakes, make mistakes, and talk and confer with your coaches right there. And it's nothing like being there at the facility, on the practice field, being around your teammates. So I definitely believe if they're not able to do that, it's definitely a competitive disadvantage for them.
And Tony, did all the Zoom stuff in the offseason help these guys?
Yeah, it can. And we face that all the time. One team has a bye, the other team's coming off a Monday night game. Or you have to play a Thursday game and you only have 3 days. So I think as a coach, you have to really stress that, hey, no excuses, no explanations. We can't let this impact us. This is just like a bad call on the field. We've got to overcome it. And I don't think you're going to hear coaches talk about that. You're not going to hear them make excuses. I agree with Rodney. There is a competitive disadvantage, but you can't let your team feel that.
All right, I'm going to let the defensive minds take over here, guys. Through 3 weeks of the NFL season, 51 points per game is the average. Last year, the record was set, 2012, the record was set, 47.7 points per game. So points per game keep going up, up, up. Axios Visuals did this chart, and this jumped out to me a little bit. Tony, why? Why are we seeing this?
Well, when I came in the league, you would open up the season, the defenses would always be ahead of the offenses. And the offenses would get their timing down, they would catch up. And then the great offenses were playing great around the playoffs. But ever since we went to this off-season program and changed training camp and everything, it's always been tougher on the defense. The offense can work out. Peyton Manning can take his guys to Duke and throw for 2 months. And Donovan McNabb can take his guys to Phoenix, Arizona, and they can all throw and work out. Defenses don't have that luxury. Well, I think you've seen that accentuated times 10 with this. Tom Brady is down here. I live in Tampa. He's at Berkeley High School every day with his receivers throwing. They're getting grooved. Defenses, as you say, watching on a Zoom meeting. So they had the advantage. And I don't know when the defenses are going to catch up, but for this first month or two, definitely. I thought Baltimore, being a good defense, would have a chance to slow Kansas City down. They had no shot. It wasn't even close. So I think that's what we're going to be dealing with for the next 5 or 6 weeks anyway.
Coach, the defense will never catch up. You know why? Because the rule changes. When you sit back and watch film, think about it. Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, they're throwing slants across the middle, deep posts, deep digs inside. No one's afraid of getting hit. No one's afraid of the safety coming down and smacking the wide receiver, because these safeties and these defensive backs and linebackers, they're afraid once they hit, first thing they're doing is looking around, seeing if a ref is going to throw a penalty or something like that. So I think the rule changes have really affected what the defense can do and the confidence in which they can play, Mike Florio.
Well, and there's another element, too, here as well. There was a great item from Kevin Seifert of ESPN.com today looking at the dramatic reduction in holding penalties. Remember, it was a couple of weeks ago, second Sunday of the season, Walt Anderson, now a supervisor of officials, said in an item posted at NFL.com, the officials have been told this year to only call clear and obvious fouls. It would have been nice for the teams to know that before week 1 so they could have coached it, but that's what's happening now. The coaches are coaching it. The holding penalties are happening, but they're not being called. That's boosting the offense. And the way that the story was written, and I can't say I disagree with it, it creates the idea that this is what the NFL wanted, that the NFL wanted to goose scoring, that the NFL wanted to not have the game bogged down by a bunch of penalties. People have been complaining about that for years. So now the penalties are down, the scoring is up, and everyone's happy.
And I'll tell you
Tony,
one more factor in that, and one reason why the holding penalties are down. They may be getting instructed not to call it. No crowd noise. If you have great pass rushers, and I was with Derek Thomas and Chris Dolman, John Randall, Warren Sapp, those guys get 70% of their sacks at home. And now all of a sudden we're watching on Monday night, and Patrick Mahomes is saying, no, let's turn it to 15, block it here. Hey, we're good over there. Everybody can hear. They're going on 2 and on 3 in the visiting stadium, or when they're visiting. And in the past, it was silent snap count, tackles can't hear, I get beat a little bit, I have to reach out and grab. None of that is happening. These veteran quarterbacks on the road are carving up good defenses.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mike,
Tony and Rodney, I was just going to say that because Aaron Rodgers told us that on Saturday before our Sunday night game. And that's exactly what happened. And Matt LaFleur, Rodney, said, I think we're going to look at that here for a while until there are fans back in the stands. Because not only are you drawing guys off, and Aaron did it a couple of times and made it pay, you're also slowing down the defense, too. They can't time it up. It's not off the silent count. And it's just an advantage. And look at the Packers. I think they've allowed 2 sacks, one in the first 2 games, and Demario Davis was a free rusher outnumbered off the left side, and nobody touched him, and he got Rodgers on the first drive of the game. Other than that, I think that's been about it for Green Bay. So, Rodney, the defenses are playing at really a double disadvantage. If you're not getting those flags, you can't hit across the middle, and you're playing at home with guys going with a hard count against you.
Well, what organization really changed the rules after losing in a particular game? They come back and completely change the rules where you can't jam a receiver past 5 yards. And I think that's a big part of it. Because you look at, all I'm saying is, Mike, you look at Kansas City Chiefs, and they're up and down the field, and no one, absolutely no one, and you talk about the Patriots, and the key to the game is being physical with these guys. These guys run 4-2, run 4-3, and no one's jamming them at the line of scrimmage. No one wants to touch them because they're afraid of a legal contact or a holding penalty. And I don't know which organization did it, but I know a certain organization changed everything, Coach.
Well, with all due respect to Chris Wallace, I'm going to give Coach Dungy a chance to reply.
All right. Let me say this. I was around when the rules got changed in 1976. Okay, and the rules have been there for 35, 40 years that you can jam at the line of scrimmage. You can be physical. You just can't jam 8 and 10 yards down the field. So in this particular game that Mr. Harrison is referencing, that's what was talked about, not changing the rule, but enforcing the rule so that those Patriots had to jam within 5 yards. So I understand what you're saying. It's a valid point. But the rules didn't change in 2004. They changed in 1976. Just so we're clear.
Fortunately,
let me add something.
Go ahead, Mike.
Let me add, to the extent that they only are going to throw a flag when it's clear and obvious, I'm reminded of the Legion of Boom 2013 time frame where they just decided, you know what? We're going to grab them on every play. They're not going to throw a flag on every play. So, Rodney, that may be what the Patriots need to do on Sunday. Just grab them on every play and force the officials to throw the flag.
I have no comment, Mike Tirico.
Wow. So you see?
I spoke my piece.
The debate did have an impact. People are ready to just let their words stand and not continue debating. Mike, it's a really good point. I will tell you that I spoke to a coach in the last week or so who talked about just that. Team X, I'll leave them unnamed for the purposes of our conversation. Team X holds on every play. They can't call defensive holding downfield on every play, so they've got to call the egregious ones. That doesn't mean that we can get free because they are holding on every play. But that's been an age-old debate. You brought it up, so, Rodney, I want to start with you. How is the New England defense, that secondary that you've talked about is the key to that unit, how will they do in your mind? How can they approach Patrick Mahomes after what Belichick and those guys watched on Monday night as they went against a good defense in Baltimore and walked it up and down the field in the first half?
Well, you see a lot of times, Mike, I think defenses give them too much respect. You got to get in their face, man. And one thing that you have to do that stands out to me every time I watch Kansas City play is you got to try to take away the big play to Tyreek Hill. When he makes the big plays, it just fuels their offense. It gets their offense so pumped up, but it opens up so many things in the middle with Travis Kelce, the screen game out of the backfield with the running backs. It's so many different things that you have to deal with. It puts so much pressure on the defense, but the number one thing you have to do is you have to take away the big play. And I see the Patriots getting up there, being physical. You maybe put Jonathan Jones on Tyreek Hill with a safety, double teaming him and forcing Kelce and some of these other guys to make plays. And you're gonna force them to go 10, 12 play drives. You can't allow them just 2 or 3 plays and it's a 60-yard touchdown, Coach. I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And I think the Chiefs are going to struggle a little bit with the changes that New England is going to make. And they will do some things to take away that big play to Tyreek Hill. The 2 things I would be worried about if I were New England is they'll have some great coverages and things that'll confuse Mahomes a little bit. The back out of the backfield, Clyde Edwards-Helaire on those linebackers, and then Patrick Mahomes running. When you double cover a bunch of people and you have these different coverages, He hurt Baltimore several times in key situations running. I think you can look for that on Sunday as well.
And I think the last point, too, is from an offensive standpoint, the offense needs to help the defense. If the Patriots have success running the ball, controlling the clock, keeping Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, they're going to have a really good shot of winning the game, because a lot of times those offenses, they're so used to being on the field, they get anxious. And when they get on the field and they're not making those big plays, they get frustrated. But Kansas City, I tell you, Kansas City is a very patient offense. You can't take away everything that they do, but some of the most important things, like you talked about, Coach, defending the back out of the backfield, the screen game to the wide receiver, some of those intricacies you have to definitely try to slow down, Mike.
Hey, two things real quick, Florio, before you hop in, Mike. One second. I just want to ask Tony, just on Rodney's point there. Tony, does it help Kansas City at all that you've just played Baltimore, unique, a little bit different offense, do so much out of the run game, and then to follow that up playing New England, which is in more of a similar vein than, let's say, Rodgers and the Packers or the passing happy offenses?
No, I think what is going to help Kansas City is the fact that Eric Bieniemy, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes have been together now for these 3 years. They're going to see something totally unique from the Patriots, something they didn't expect, and how quick they have to adjust to it. But these guys do. I mean, they're very good. Patrick Mahomes has a million plays he can go to. Andy Reid and Bieniemy dial them up. They're going to have a tough time figuring it out early, but I think they'll adjust and adapt.
See, I disagree with you, Coach, because I don't think the Patriots are going to try to throw something super exotic on them, because they have so many things and they've seen everything. Everybody's tried to blitz them, blitz cornerbacks, drop defensive linemen. They've seen everything. But I think the most important thing is knowing your assignment. Don't give up any blown coverages, any, mistakes in the secondary, and putting pressure. I mean, the Los Angeles Chargers did a great job 2 weeks ago when they played them, because they hit Patrick Mahomes and they slowed him down. It wasn't like, they sacked him a bunch of times, but just constantly hitting him, putting pressure on him. Every time he dropped back, he had to pay attention to their pass rushers.
I don't know that blitzing makes a difference. That's what the Titans decided last year, because you're not going to get him, and he torched the Ravens defense the other night. But Rodney, on your point regarding the New England offense, I think that when you play the Chiefs, your offense has to score points when it can. You can't kick a field goal when you're inside the 10 on the first drive of the game. You got to go for 7. You got to score your points. You have to accept that at some point the Chiefs are going to be like that basketball team that goes on an 18-2 run. That's just what they are. So you need to prepare yourself for it. You need to score your points. And the other thing you can't do, and we saw this from Lamar Jackson when the Ravens were down 34-20, he had that demeanor of a guy who was frustrated and defeated. You can't have that. And that's a lesson to Cam Newton, because we've seen that at times from him in the past. They need to focus on scoring points whenever they can and not worry about what the Chiefs are doing. Otherwise, they're not going to have a chance to end up with at least one more point on the scoreboard than the Chiefs have.
All right, we have to wrap up, guys, but I want to get a brief word here on the Sunday night game. The 49ers, with everybody out, right, missing 11 starters, go back to New Jersey and beat the Giants after they beat the Jets. So they leave 2-0, but even more beat up. But now they'll come back and take on the Eagles, who tied, yet gained ground, I should say, on everyone in their division, because everybody else lost, the Cowboys and the Washington football team and the Giants. Tony, let me start with you on the Philadelphia situation. What is your largest area of concern with that Eagles offense after watching them here for 3 weeks now?
Well, to me, they've got to generate some running game and be balanced, not expect Carson Wentz to have to do everything. And then he's got to understand that he doesn't have to be Superman either. He's got to make the plays that are available, but not put himself in harm's way, holding the ball, trying to make too much happen, and certainly not turn it over.
Coach, I agree with you, and I put the pressure on Doug Peterson, because he's the head coach. He's responsible for making sure that his team is prepared. And you look at Carson Wentz, he's just overthinking everything. And that's Doug Peterson's job to kind of simplify things, bring him back. And he's holding the ball. He's got a guy wide open. He doesn't want that. Then he looks downfield, and before you know it, the offensive line caves in. I just think they have to get back to doing simple things and run the offense through Miles Sanders. It can't be Carson Wentz dropping back trying to save the day. He's just not that talented of a player, but he's not playing with that level of confidence either. And
I just need to say this to all Eagles fans out there. You won a Super Bowl within the last 3 years. It's way too premature to start calling for everyone to be fired, and that's what they're doing. Get rid of Howie Roseman. Get rid of Doug Peterson. Get rid of Carson Wentz. Make Jeff Lurie sell the team. Folks, sometimes it takes time, and I think there's so much pressure on Carson Wentz because of that, because he wasn't the quarterback for the Super Bowl win, because they picked him over Nick Foles. They paid him the contract. They need to find ways to let him build his confidence during games, because it does feel like he's trying to do too much to justify the faith that the team has in him and to quiet all the folks in Philly who don't appreciate the fact that there's a fairly new Lombardi trophy in the lobby to the facility.
Mike, Tariq, I just want to make one last.
Yeah.
I just want to make one last point about Doug Peterson. The thing that I'm really kind of just like stunned about, Doug Peterson has changed his complete mindset. Before it was, hey, I'm going for it on fourth down. He had an arrogance and a confidence in his team. Now all of a sudden he's playing for ties. He's conservative, and it's like, come on, Doug. Like what kind of coach are you going to be? You're totally different than what you were before. And, Coach, you talked about it. When they had success, they were running the football. They got to get back to running the football, controlling the line of scrimmage. And you look at a guy like Jason Peters, who moved from guard to left tackle. He looks terrible. Why would you put a guy that's so old he can't move, he can't handle those young pass rushers, and you wonder why they're struggling offensively?
And they've run out of options with all the injuries. Tony, I'm just curious, as a coach, are there times that you know that your team, you just can't get them there? You know, whether it's offensive line injuries or what's going on, that you can't be as aggressive as you'd like to be because the guys who you have right now aren't in a place to execute at that level at this moment.
You definitely have more confidence when you have your veteran players and things are rolling. But you guys hit on one great point, and I think Rodney said it, running the football. When Nick Foles played, that was a big part of it. And then you didn't get that tremendous pass rush because so many of the passes were off the RPO. And the defensive linemen were reading run. They weren't teeing off and rushing the passer. So I think they've got to get back to that and help that offensive line a little bit.
256 and 256. I think that's going to be my website because every fan base does not believe that every team does lose a game. You can't win every game. Your team can't. There are an even number of wins and losses in the league every year. And you go city to city. I was just in New Orleans, was listening to the folks in Green Bay, back home in Michigan. Everyone wants to know what's wrong with their team. Somebody does have to lose every game. It's sometimes we forget.
Mike, what is 256? What is
it's the number of games in the year.
256 games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So everybody wins one, everybody loses one. At the end of the day, Rodney, and you know what? Actually, it's not the case because we already had a tie. So you get my drift. But I'm going to say this. That tie may help Philadelphia win at the end of the year. That may not have been the worst thing in the world. If you try that 58-yard field goal and you miss and you turn the ball over, the Bengals get one play, they're in field goal range, that's a loss for you. That might, in a division where, 8-8, 9-7 already is looking good at the start of October, that might be helping Philadelphia down the line. All right, guys, we'll talk about the 49ers when we're all together for football night, and Chris Sims joins us. Have safe travels, a great rest of your week. We look forward to seeing everybody Sunday. Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.